What's going on, internet friends? It is me, DC, and we are back for another week. We're still here. We survived. Pleasant surprise for me is that the first episode of the podcast, or at least the first one that I released, did pretty well. I mean, or I say pretty well. When I say pretty well, when I finished that thing and submitted it, or whatever, uploaded, excuse me, I was kind of thinking, if this thing gets 1 to 5 listens or views, or however you qualify it for a podcast, I was going to be happy with that, and it's done much better. And I realize I'm still a very small channel, and may always be. I don't know. I don't really have a goal. But anyway, so I was excited to just kind of see the results from week 1, and it gave me a little bit of extra motivation for this week, and I'm kind of narrowing in the format, and so I'll be able to tell you guys, whoever's listening, and myself mostly, just to have an idea of what to expect going forward, and what I'm really kind of gonna hone in on. I think with the podcast portion, definitely reviews are gonna be a huge chunk of it. But what I've spent a lot of time thinking about is there are so many movie review channels. I mean, if you're listening to this, then you know that. I mean, there's podcasts, I could go on and on. There's reels that are clips of movies, and I've spent I don't know, the last 3 months just kind of trying to figure out what I was even gonna. I mean, I knew it was always gonna be centered around movies, but it's different when boots hits the ground, I guess you should say. And so for this episode, I'll stop right there when I said boots on the ground. So one thing I noticed, I took some time to reflect, pause the taping, because my neighbor is this might be too TMI, but I decided, this is one of the things I decided, is that the podcast, I thought about the podcast that I listen to, which I think I mentioned in the last episode, that I listen to a lot, and I have been quite a bit since before there were even really podcasts. I listened to talk radio, and but what I was thinking about this week was, what the podcasts that I follow, that I kind of make more time for than others. I'm sure everybody has these lists, whether it's books or any kind of hobby, but time's a factor. So when you get to when you're stretched thin, something's got to go. But the ones that stick, it was just getting to know the people. So while movies are film, television, which I guess you already really knew that, but what I'm going to try and do is, at least for a few minutes at the beginning of each podcast, and I'm going to put chapters so that people that don't care about this part can just jump forward to the actual stuff that's specifically about film, but just little personal stuff, whatever, stuff from the week, stuff from what's going on in my world outside of YouTube, and then that way, hope maybe that generates some kind of discussion, or something else that might be useful to a viewer or a subscriber, to myself personally. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting, and I don't know. There's all this random stuff that happens. Edit something together, but so basically, yeah, characters are so important, and I kind of decided that that's gonna be the focus. Like, oh, this is kind of where I was going. So in my writing, I guess is where I was eventually going. Like, I really look to film, television, books, and characters that other people have written. You know, to help develop my own characters, because they're so important, like, to me, and I think to, like, people that I consider to be great writers. I think they see their characters as real people, and they have, like, real emotions attached to them, like, because they're their creations. It's because they're your creations. I think it's like, if you anything that you make, I have the same feeling about a picture I take. If I have it developed and I put it up on the wall, like, it's something that is my creative expression, and, like, now it's out in the open and for me and other people to look at. So that's going to be the focus. And one of the tools that, like, I've kind of discovered in this character development thing and trying to understand character better, trying to understand myself better, was the Myers-Briggs system, which I had messed with before. Like, honestly, during my divorce, my counselor made me take a Myers-Briggs personality test. And here's what's really interesting is, one thing I've noticed, and I actually found a video on YouTube that suggested this, but was that my test was off by a letter. Like, when I took it then, and then I retook it like recently, and you could be off by a letter. And I think because of the all the stuff that I was going through at the time, and just, like, where I was, like, I think I may have presented to that test differently. But anyways, it's really interesting stuff. And there are a few channels that know what I'm not even I wouldn't even consider myself a rookie at it. It's a very complicated psychological, like a system to explain psychological or, like, cognitive behavior. But to me, it's, like, super fascinating. And in case, I'll say it. My type is I'm an ENTP, which I forget what they all have little nicknames. I don't remember. But I do remember there are some pretty memorable and also problematic characters who I've looked at who are ENTPs. So it's a pretty interesting type. I think it's really fun. And this is what I was going to say. There are some channels that do some fun, like, videos where they type either actors or characters, or do skits. It's I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fascinating. Like, when you assign these types, and then you go back and you say, okay, well, what does that technically mean? And then you see how it presents itself in situations. I think it's fascinating. So you'll probably see some stuff around that. Again, I'm very new to it and still trying to understand it. So I'm not gonna try and say, like, oh, this scene says, this character is this type and he's displaying this, because I don't have that kind of grasp of it, honestly. But I just think it's really fun. And I guess that's kind of where I wanted to say about the direction of the pod. And then like, just get to it. Like, I think so just getting to the stuff. Actually, there's one thing I know we're not going to get to today, so let me start there. I wanted to talk about film festivals. So I think for next week, I'm going to just make that note now, that, like, I want to spend a little bit of time because I think TIFF is coming up, which is, for those that don't know, if I remember right, it's the Toronto International Film Festival. So it's either already happened, which, if it already happened, then I missed it. I don't think it has, though. I feel like it's coming up, because I keep seeing stuff about it, and I follow them on Instagram and Twitter. So I don't think it's happened yet. But so next week I want to spend a little bit of time. Like, I don't know. I've never followed them like this close. I think I was doing this a little bit last year when around the time of Sundance. So I tried to watch like the films that were, or at least like a few that were at Sundance last year, and which was interesting. I watched stuff that I liked it. I watched movies that I never would have watched. I think I liked one of them, and never would have watched otherwise. I liked one or two. I want to say there were two. There was one that people were all over. What was the name of it? I'll find it for next week because we'll be talking film festivals. But mostly TIFF, because I think TIFF is coming up. And there are a couple of movies I've seen for previews, or seen previews of, that look good, that are going to be premiering at TIFF. So I think that'll be fun. And I'm not sure if Ferrari can't be, but that was the other thing, was I was going to do an upcoming list, like a hype meter for for the upcoming shows in the fall, which I might still run through that real quick once I talked. I think the main thing was there were two shows that I watched that I wanted to talk a little bit about, because one was really good and then the other one was should have been really good, but it was a big disappointment to me. So I guess next week we'll for sure talk a little film festivals, and then a little bit of like a list, maybe like a top 5, top 10 of what's coming up this fall. Oh, and real quick, here's one thing I did want to say is I've noticed, like as now I'm paying hyper close attention to, there's this thing with like the streamers, right? The battle of the streamers between Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus, what's the other one? The little stupid cousin, Paramount Plus, and then there's even more, like I forget where it goes after that, but Peacock's another one. So the streaming wars, and there's the strike and all that, but paying attention now to at least what I think, in my personal opinion, is good programming, or like high quality programming. Apple is killing everyone right now. I never thought I would say that. Like, matter of fact, I told my son, my son is he just started college, and he's into economics, which I love economics. Also, I'm not doing it right now, but I do some day trading, and boy, do I love it. And so I actually sent him a message the other day. I was like, buy Apple stock. Like, I don't even have to look at it. I was just just took a close look at Apple, because I hadn't realized it. I started looking at my watch list, and I was like, because I watched The Crowded Room. Let's talk No, actually, we're going to put The Crowded Room to the side. Let's talk Star Wars first. Disney Plus is a streamer, and it fits in this conversation. So, yes, buy Apple stock. I think Apple's a buy, but that's for another podcast, probably a different channel. But so the streaming war, Apple is killing it right now, in my opinion. They have their bench is so deep. I think whoever is picking their stuff, which maybe I'll look into who's deciding on what their shows are a little bit. But when I really started looking at their roster of like what their shows are, and like how much of their stuff was on like what I had picked out to watch, there's a ton. It's like they have Hijack, the new one with Idris Elba, that I watched. I watched one episode of it. It was really solid, and I heard lots of good things about it. So I'll definitely finish it. So it'll be covered here. Oh, and that was the other thing. So I'm going to be putting synopsis up at some point as I watch them. There'll be synopsis videos. So I know some people hate them, some people love them, like whatever. It only makes sense for me to do them since I'm going to be watching the shows anyway. So those will be incoming. Probably won't do reviews for individual episodes, but probably for the season as a whole. But anyway, so yeah, they have Hijack. They have the one I watched that I'll talk about in a minute, The Crowded Room with Tom Holland. Spider-Man Spider-Man's putting in work on Apple Plus, man. Let me tell you something. And then what was the other one? Oh, Foundation, which I honestly can't believe I haven't watched yet. Foundation was the show that I was most looking forward to, like, coming into this year. Foundation season 2. Foundation season 1 was my favorite series of last year. It was really close between that one and For All Mankind, which I love. And there's one with there's so many, but so Apple has Foundation. I'm interested in the morning show. I know they have Ted Lasso. I've never watched it, but I heard only really the first season of that was really good, so that kind of like curbed my interest. But so many, and I remember what made me think that was, I remember when HBO had a period, and I'm sure it's cyclical and it'll just kind of go around, but there was a time when that was HBO, like a long time ago. I mean, probably Game of Thrones is the most recent. House of the Dragon tried, but I don't think people are feeling, as much as they want people to be into House of the Dragon, it's nothing. Like, even going back, if you're a subscriber, you'll notice I went back looking through House of the Dragon season 1 and Game of Thrones, like, it's not even close. House of the Dragon it pales in comparison to season 1, episode 1 of Game of Thrones. It's not even close. But so yeah, I think it's cyclical, but it used to be HBO, and then I feel like it kind of went to Showtime. Dexter was big for a while, and I mean, so it moves around. But I feel like right now Netflix hasn't dropped any shows. Netflix had it for a while with like House of Cards and Stranger Things, and like, but their binge model kind of throws it off. But anyway, so I don't know. Apple's exciting. If you don't have Apple, I feel like it's got a lot of good stuff on there that you might be interested in. Disney Plus is at the bottom of that list. Like, I'd almost, at this point, I'd put probably Peacock or Paramount Plus. Oh, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna rank the streamers for next week. So fall festivals, I'm gonna rank the streamers, and so, like, because I've already talked for almost an hour, I'm just gonna go through the 2 shows real quick. So Star Wars, the reason, then that's what spawned all this, was Ahsoka, which I went back and forth on, because Star Wars holds such a strange place. It's definitely, like, the films are one thing, but then the TV properties are so scattered. I'm not going to cover Star Wars Rebels because it's animated. Well, that's not true. Invincible, I think, is prestige television, so I might cover Invincible season 2. That might be on my fall hype meter. Who knows? In fact, I'm going to say it's probably going to be on there, and will probably be covered here. So, but it's the tone, I guess. So Rebels is for kids, for adolescents. But then you have Ahsoka, which is supposed to be, I don't know who Ahsoka is supposed to be for. It's probably supposed to be for everybody, kind of like The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. That piece of trash. Sorry, that was harsh. So Ahsoka. I saw the trailer for Ahsoka, and literally, this is so embarrassing, I literally teared up when I saw the trailer for Ahsoka, and I think that's what makes Dave Filoni, like, good for Star Wars, is that that man loves Star Wars. I honestly think he has something a little bit weird with this character, like an unhealthy obsession with Ahsoka that is a problem, because Dave Filoni's not a good writer. I'm sorry. Like, there's a I'm not going to say the name of the podcast, but there's a podcast that I had a lot of respect for up until Ahsoka, because this podcast is not calling out stuff about this show, and I'm going to be honest, like, I turned it off. Like, it was so bad to me. It was insulting. Like, the first 10 minutes of Ahsoka were basically stolen from other better Star Wars properties. And I'm talking about like stuff that should never be touched. Like I can understand like the nostalgia thing, but when you're ripping off a scene or a shot, you know, or framing from episode 4, A New Hope, or you're like taking a sequence that was like, this is the part that really pissed me off, honestly. There's a sequence in the first 10 minutes which I feel was completely ripped from, like, it was given to Ray Stevenson's character, and I think it looks exactly like the ending of Rogue One, which is flip-flops back and forth with Empire Strikes Back for my favorite Star Wars film. So I take it a little personally when I see like Ray Stevenson, like whatever that character's name. Oh, and Ray Stevenson, R.I.P. I put it up, like if you're a subscriber, you probably saw his picture up, but like I didn't realize because I was so behind doing other stuff that Ray Stevenson had passed away, and I didn't get to. I'm not going to get emotional about it right now, but man, Ray Stevenson, been knowing him since back in the day with Rome. But anyway, so I was very happy to see that he got to be in Star Wars. Same for Rosario Dawson. I'm huge fans of these people, and I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, so it pisses me off. But the issue I think is that there are good things that Dave Filoni does, and so they give him like too much power, you know. And I think honestly, as much as I love Star Wars, George Lucas had the same problem. They're both super creative guys. They come up with super cool ideas and super cool concepts, but like they need help. And that's not a bad thing. Like I'm the same way. Like there might be things that areas I'm really good at, like creatively, but other areas I struggle at. Like people hammered the prequel trilogy for the bad dialogue, and like and like how the characters, like there are interviews with Natalie Portman where like people killed her. Like, you know how this woman did Black Swan, and people are saying she can't act because of how Padme came across in episode 2. And it's because George Lucas can't direct. Like, George Lucas doesn't know like how to direct Natalie Portman. That's not Natalie Portman's fault. Like, Natalie Portman did what George Lucas told her to do, and that's what we got on screen. So don't blame her. That's George's fault. The reason Empire is so good is because George Lucas didn't direct it. Like, I don't know. I didn't know that until recently. And so, I mean, and that's my opinion. That's not, I mean, it's a fact that George Lucas didn't direct it. And like when you start learning more about the behind the scenes of Star Wars, like George Lucas is the father of Star Wars, and I love him for that. Like it's brought me hours and hours and hours of joy and entertainment. But he's human, and he had a lot of help, and there were some key things that made Star Wars super successful that had nothing to do with George Lucas. Like, I think, if I remember right, I mean, there's all stuff, you can go out and look this stuff up, but like I want to say like his wife made an edit that changed the ending that ended up being the ending that we got, something like that. But all kinds of things that you just don't know. And these creative guys, you know, like if you look at Marvel, and this is where I wanted to go with it, was because if you look at it, there's 3 of them right now, right, that are kind of in similar positions. We got Dave Filoni with Star Wars. Him and Jon Favreau are kind of doing the same thing. And honestly, I feel kind of the same way about Jon Favreau. I think Jon Favreau is a better writer than Dave Filoni, but not good enough to be probably running a show on his own, because The Mandalorian's not great either. I thought it was going to be great, and the first season was I loved the first season, and even, you know, anyway, that's a whole nother, but all that to say, So for Star Wars, we got Filoni and Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy, and it's like this three-way like thing. And then you got Kevin Feige at Marvel, who is like the most successful. Like everybody knows like they're what every other IP property is aspiring to be. But it's struggling right now, right? It had Endgame, it had that whole, phase 1 through 5, and now it's kind of like in the in-between phase. They don't know if Kang's going to work. Jonathan Majors is like, legal issues are up in the air. And then you have like James Gunn going over to DC, Zack Snyder's out, and it's a whole new world at DC. And so like I'm fascinated by this whole thing, like watching what these three silos are gonna do, and like how, like, and especially with Gunn. And because let me tell you something, if you don't know about James Gunn, I didn't know about James Gunn as much until like being in social media every day. James Gunn has done something I would have never expected. I mean, because he's essentially Kevin Feige now, right? So he is the top dude at DC. If you didn't know this, James Gunn, who wrote and directed all the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I mean, he's done a lot more than that. He's been around. He's done one of my favorite zombie movies. Like, this is how long. I mean, I wouldn't say it like I was following him, but he did like Dawn of the Dead, the one with Ving Rhames, who like the one in the mall. Like, if everybody remembers, like it's one of my favorite zombie movies. But that's James Gunn. So he's been around forever, and but yeah, did all the Guardians movies, and then I think at some point was like fired from Marvel, and then they brought him back to finish to do Guardians 3, and then now he's leaving again after Zack Snyder's out at DC, after never being able to really get that thing off the ground, and so now James Gunn is basically the equivalent of Kevin Feige at DC, and he's going to shape their universe and decide what gets made and greenlighted and developed and all that. So, but what I think is special about him, this man loves the fan. If he doesn't love the fans, he is so good at faking it. Like, this man is on Threads, and if you don't know what Threads is, like a few weeks ago or a month ago, like Instagram or Meta, the company that does Instagram and Facebook, released an app to compete with Twitter that it's called Threads, and James Gunn is on Threads, like essentially tweeting back and forth with fans. Like they I don't know what you call it, but they tweet at him or thread at him, whatever you call it, and then he responds, and it's like he has an ongoing like conversation with the fandom, and they love him for it, and it seems like he genuinely loves them. And so I don't know, I'm kind of excited about, I mean, what he's gonna do. Like, some of the titles that he's coming out with sound super weird, like Creature Commandos. Have no idea what it's about, but the little bit I've heard, it sounds weird. But then people would have said like Guardians of the Galaxy, who would have thought that I would fall in love with a talking raccoon? Like, not literally fall in love with him, but you know what I'm saying. He's like one of my favorite characters, and it turns out he's not my Myers-Briggs type. Rocket is supposedly, and that's the thing, there's like different, supposedly Rocket's an ENTJ, but people have different opinions, but he's very close to mine, which is ENTP. So we're like, and that's why I love to see, like, you'll probably see that scene. It made me think of that scene where Tony Stark, after they find him in, I think it's Endgame or is it Infinity War, but after he's been in space forever, and he meets Rocket, and they're like, he's like, what does he say? Until 5 minutes ago, I thought you were Build-A-Bear. And Rocket's like, well, maybe I am. And I just think that's like the two types, like, seeing each other and like evaluating each other. I don't know. That's my take on it. But see, this is what I mean. I'm not an expert, but that's just my I have no idea. I was looking for a word. But so Star Wars, yeah. I think Ahsoka, the first, like I say, he ripped off a lot. I mean, it looks like Star Wars. It smells like Star Wars. But if you don't know, like, I watched a lot of Star Wars and I know about the character of Ahsoka. But even for me, like, knowing what I know, I had no idea what was going on. And they didn't use any dialogue to help tell you. And if you're not devoted to watching Rosario Dawson walk around and not say anything, for long periods of time with no action, and then the fight scenes, like she did like the moves that I saw her, like her choreography, like she worked at it. Like she's a great actress and she throws herself into the role. Like no problems with Rosario Dawson. I just think it's just the show in general. It's like, it feels very alienating. Like, to me, it should have felt like an origin story for Ahsoka, but it didn't. Like, I don't know. I was super disappointed in it. I felt like it lacked originality, like nothing to grab me. Like, I felt like it was counting on me being devoted, like knowing that I was not going to turn it off, and I did. So there you go. And what I watched instead turned out to be like this really exciting story that, like, now I'm really excited to watch the rest of the episodes. I think there's 8 or 9, but it's an Apple Plus TV show, original, and I think it's based on a book. I didn't know this until after I watched the first episode, but don't look up the book, because I made that mistake, and it turns out it's based on a true story. So if you look up the book, you're going to know what happens, and so I wish I hadn't done that. So if you decide to watch The Crowded Room, don't look up anything else. I'm not going to spoil anything here. I only watched one episode of it because I saw it had Tom Holland in it, and I have been, honestly, I've been feeling bad for my boy Tom Holland lately. I've been a big fan of his since seeing him. I don't think I'd ever seen him before he was Spider-Man. I can't remember seeing him in anything before Civil War. But kind of fell in love with him there, and then now he's with Zendaya, who I'm also a huge fan of, and so now to me they're like, I don't know, they're kind of like Jay-Z and Beyonce were at time. Those power, like Brangelina and like Affleck and Lopez, like they're one of those, like the royalty couples. So I don't know, I just think they're cute, and I like to support their projects. I always watch them and trying to at least give them the benefit of the doubt. And so, but Tom Holland, I feel like, has had it pretty rough lately. Like, I know he tried to do this movie with Daisy Ridley that turned out to be this disaster. I don't even remember what it's called. I saw like a clip of it and I was like, I don't understand. But anyway, so saw that, and supposedly Tom Holland is a cousin of. Hold on, let's see. No, he's an ENFP. Yeah, okay. So big fan of Tom Holland, and so the show is called A Crowded Room, and it's a period, or like I said, based on a true story. You've already said all this, so. Okay, so don't look up the book, but I'll tell you that it's period, I guess, period biography. I think it happened, I didn't look up the specifics, but from the costumes and the production design and all that, it looks like it takes place between like the 60s and 70s, I guess, in New York City, and it's basically it's a crime story. Okay, so you gotta think about this. True story. So so the synopsis is: Manhattan in the summer of 1979, a young man is arrested for a shocking crime, and an unlikely investigator who's played by, what's her name? Not Julia Stiles. What's her name? And an unlikely investigator who was played by Amanda Seyfried. The casting in this show is great. Like, you're going to see so many faces. To solve an unlikely investigator must solve the mystery behind it before the true criminal strikes again. And it looks like it aired back in June is when it first came out. But I just watched the first episode, and like I say, I think my overall impression of it was that it was super well done, like very well thought out. Like, I think whoever like started this project, like probably the book, like had a, really like spoke to them, like something about it. It seems like it's going to have some type of mental health issue or aspect to it. I have not read the book. But I thought the look of it was great. Like the production design looked really good. I thought I don't know, I love the color palette like that they chose for the just for the look of it. The color, I don't know what you call it. I don't know, but I love the color palette that they chose. The casting, like I said, lots of familiar faces. Amanda Seyfried, Jason Isaacs, who people will remember when they see him, and overall, just a very like Tom Holland performance. Like getting to see him have some range, other than which he did in the last Spider-Man movie, but in this one he really get to see a different side of Tom Holland, which I think is super exciting for these MCU actors and actresses or whatever, because they get so kind of like not typecast but pigeonholed, or we have this idea of them, and so we always see Peter Parker, but this you go watch The Crowded Room, you're gonna have a different idea of who Peter Parker, or like it's going to reshape your idea of Tom Holland and what he's capable of, which is amazing, because I think Adam Driver does this a lot, which I think is great for them, and it's great for us because we get to see these like really special performances from I think actors who they get underestimated, because you see, oh well, he's Kylo Ren or he's Spider-Man, but like, I mean, some of these guys, like, they take their craft like so seriously. It's like amazing. So, and speaking of Adam Driver, I think I mentioned real quickly, this will come up again on the fall hype meter, but sorry, I didn't mean to use fall hype meter. Somebody else uses that, but basically, like my upcoming stuff, Ferrari, the trailer dropped, and it's Michael Mann, who is going to be for sure a favor of the channel, director of Heat, Collateral, Black Hat, if there's my Black Hat heads out there who remember when Chris Helmsworth was an American hacker released from prison to help track down cyber terrorists. Do you remember that? So yeah, but Ferrari looks amazing, and what I think is really cool, I'm not sure because I haven't looked of when the film is set, but if you watched Ford v Ferrari, you know that there's like the big race where the Shelby and Miles and Shelby raced Le Mans against old man Ferrari. So I want to say that this movie looks like it's the flip side of that race, because I could have sworn in the trailer it looks like they're at that race in Le Mans. So I don't know, but if that's what it is, that's going to be super cool. Either way, it will make for, I think, an amazing double feature, which I've never done before, but that might be pretty dope if you could go to a theater and watch Ford v Ferrari and then Ferrari after that. I think that would be fucking dope. So I think I'm gonna drop it here, and then like I say, we'll pick back up next week not next week. I'm gonna do 2 episodes a week. That was the other thing I meant to say at the top. I'm gonna do 2 episodes a week. So I'm gonna shoot for. No, I'm not gonna shoot for it. I'm gonna set it in stone. This one will be funky because today's Sunday, and I recorded on a weird day. So this one will count for our Monday episode this week. Okay, so don't go crazy. Not that anybody would go crazy. I think if this one gets into the hundreds, I'll be happy, or into the 100. So next week we'll do, so this will be Monday's episode. So then I'll drop another one on Thursday. I'll shoot for like Thursday morning, and then so that one will have like the upcoming stuff. It'll have the we'll dip a little bit, not too long, you know, a few minutes on TIFF, on Sundance, the major ones, what's important. Because, you know, sometimes we get, like, if I remember right, I think Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction premiered at Sundance, if I remember, you know. So we film festivals, you can get some good stuff out of them. So, but I'm interested to learn a little bit more. Hopefully other people are too. So we'll touch a little bit on those and do the upcoming shows, and then whatever I've watched between now and then, and sprinkle in a little bit of life on top, and hopefully we'll have a show. So thanks for listening again, and I'll talk to you next time.